Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It's Friday, the 11th of November, and this is episode 81 of Retuning Your Firm. And it's a slightly different episode today for those of you who are regulars, because we're not having a poll. We're having a single and really interesting, amazing guest. And we're also then talking at length about the three themes that you'll see in front of you on the screen, which are respectively leadership, and we'll talk about what it means to be a leader, community and how it's important to contribute to your community, but also one that we haven't really covered much in the 80-odd episodes is diplomacy, and to what extent can one contribute through that route as well. So it's going to be a really interesting show, really looking forward to it. Let me just talk you through the people who we've got on today. And first of all, I would like to introduce Francesca Lagerberg. And Francesca Lagerberg, as you know, has been the co-host with me of this show for 60 plus episodes. And she is the, let's get this right, the CEO of Baker Tilly International, and she's been doing for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months now, something like that. Anyway, welcome, Francesca. We now turn, if I may, to our guest. And our guest today is Boris Boyanov. Now, Boris is a number of interesting things. He's the founder and managing partner of his own firm called Boyanov Co. That may not sound very much, but it is one of the top tier firms in Bulgaria. So how do you manage a top tier professional firm? He's also got a number of very important and influential leadership and board roles for community-based activities. So, for example, he is the honorary consul, and he's told me he's now been elected to an even higher group of association honorary consuls. He's very involved in the Chamber of Commerce. He's involved in the equivalent of the UK's CBI. He works closely with the bar associations, so putting on pan-European forums. And this one is a little bit unusual, Mosuli. He's also very involved in International Yoga Day, which is a UN thing, but his country, Bulgaria, is in terms of population, the largest contributor to that. And that's all with him and his wife. So over to you, Boris.
Thank you very much, Richard, for your kind invitation. Frankly, I have no ready tips because I never had time to think how it works. But let me find out the main points in my short story. It happens, as you said, that I'm involved in many organizations, businesses, etc. Most nations have famous sayings like, if you run after 2 rabbits, you catch neither. It means practically you should be focused. I think I was focused. I graduated always first in my class, in the school, in the university. Then I created this firm you mentioned. But I was focused on my studies only, on my work, no side activities. If you ask me whether I feel sorry, no, for the time being. And so focus is very important. Then another one, as you know, hard work is required for any achievement. Maybe another element is legal education, because it's the law is a natural fit for leaders and many things like no other profession. So I would say here that the basis also is important. You mentioned that we created one of the first law firms in Bulgaria, which is the market champion for the last 34 years. We do business law, and because of the clients, we started to understand business better. With 8-9 partners at a certain time, the firm was set up properly, and I was able to perform without, the firm was able to perform without my full-time involvement. At the same time, I was invited in the management of the largest employment organizations in this country. So my main activity is connected with the fight for the rule of law, and then for improving the business climate in the country and lately in the region. We created, for example, 20 years a group. I'm the founder, a group called Southeast Europe Legal Group, which covers 12 jurisdictions in Southeast Europe. In all these organizations, I apply the knowledge I have already had and share it for the benefit of the others. And of course, you have to take responsibilities. I remember a very wealthy Indian businessman who said once that people until 50, 60 receive from the society, and after that they should give back to the society. I think it's not necessary to wait until 50, 60. At the same time, you see how it works, the natural law that once you give, you receive. From these involvements, I learned a lot, and I made many friends around the globe. And of course, this helps me to my legal practice and to my colleagues. Maybe another tip I learned from the work in my firm and also from various business organizations. I'll give you an example to be more clear. I became president of AmCham, the American Chamber, and for a few years we were the best chamber in Europe. Why? Not because of me so much, because we had excellent team. So people we work with are extremely important. After that, the British ambassador asked me to help because the British Bulgarian Chamber at that time was demolished. We created a new one, which currently is extremely prosperous. Again, because of good people. Then I established from scratch Indian and Maltese business chambers, again with friends I knew I was able to trust. And maybe 2, 3 more interesting directions. You mentioned I'm Consul General for Malta. I'm President of Association of Honorary Consuls in Bulgaria, and since Monday, I became board member of the World Federation of Consuls. A job which is not paid, it's honorable, but extremely useful. And frankly, it gives substantial satisfaction to see that your knowledge and skills work for improvement of bilateral and international relations. And if you ask me for the tip here, maybe you'll say that nothing, even international borders are not able to stop you when you want to contribute. Another important thing is education, training, mentoring, not only in the firm. One example you mentioned is the Balkan Legal Forum we run for the last 22 years on behalf of the International Bar Association, which is considered to be the best event in the region. And we organized a special foundation for legal development. The idea behind is to create a new generation of modern lawyers with high morale and skills at the international level. We provide scholarships, etc. We believe that creation of this new generation, this contribution is extremely important. And the last you mentioned, and maybe this is the most important, that we should do something about spiritual life, something for people's well-being, for culture. And that's why I'm trying to be helpful to my wife, who is the national coordinator of International Yoga Day in Bulgaria. If you ask me how I support, I just help with things I could do. I arrange sponsors, media, etc. But this gives enormous satisfaction. Just to give you an example, in this 7 million country, we had celebration of International Yoga Day in 44 cities. It's a huge event, maybe between 15,000 or 18,000 people participate. So all of the above is connected with certain sacrifices. Of course, there are restrictions, limits. Maybe it's for the account of my family. I don't have much time for myself. But if you ask me whether I regret, I would say no. I feel full and satisfied, and I believe this is important.
Boris, thank you very much for that amazing presentation. So Francesca, which of these elements would you like to pick up as yourself a fellow leader in international business, maybe the spiritual side that was mentioned at the end, which is it's a fascinating mix, and I suppose in a way to have been first in the class at school, first at the uni, really get the business growing, and then through that realizing, oh, business matters, and then through clients, etc. So which comes first, do you think? Where should the managing partner who feels they should be doing a bit more, where do you think they should start?
I must think, even though it's early in the morning, I'm feeling a little tired, actually. That sounds like an exhausting list of things that you've achieved, Boris. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think there's an old saying in the UK, which give a busy person something more to do, because I think there's something intriguing about the mindset that doesn't see the barriers, but enables things to get done. And that clearly has happened in the way that you do things. I'm a massive fan of people having fun doing the job they do, and the fact that you do so many things and you're obviously getting enjoyment out of them. And perhaps that's the piece I'd like to focus in on, Richard, because in any leadership role, it doesn't really matter what it is. In any leadership role, if you're not enjoying doing what you're doing, you're probably not bringing your best self to it. And we've talked a lot on these programs about work-life balance, as though there is some magical point where you can get everything wonderfully aligned and it's like a Disney movie. And we know that isn't how life works. Life is far more complicated than that, and you have different things. But if you're fundamentally feeling holistically together and it's working, and you're having fun at work and you're having fun when you're not working, that feels like a much better way to be aligned. And so maybe, Boris, if I throw it back at you, you're dealing with an awful lot of situations where you're bringing vast numbers of people together, either within your own personal practice or in the various broader associate kind of roles that you have. How do you make that happen? How do you drive consensus when you have no power?
Well, it's a very controversial answer, maybe. First of all, I believe in the dictatorship, not so much in the democracy. But once the train starts, I think you should talk to the people, understand them, and then democracy could come. So this combination, if I could say.
A sort of benign dictatorship, I'm feeling there.
In the beginning, there is a dictatorship, and then there is a democracy.
Sorry, just to pick in, isn't that in a way a bit like leadership? Because they often say that at certain points in the development of a business, a command and control dictatorship, if you like, is essential. But then if you keep that particular model as you grow, then that kind of doesn't really work. So you need to be shifting more into what we might call challenge and support. In other words, here's a challenge, please get on with it. You know, you have my support along the way. And don't you zigzag to some extent. And I go back to Francesca's point about balance. There always has to be a balance, but the idea that there is a fixed balance, the balance shifts as much as anything else. Does that make sense?
And I think COVID was extremely useful in this because we started to pay more attention to people, I think, at least in my case. And we started to care more about each other and to be interested in personal stories, to try to be helpful, see how we could help, etc. So it was a very good lesson this time.
There's something really fascinating, isn't there, about that, how COVID, some of the good things of COVID have come out to drive slightly different behaviors. And picking up on that and the leadership piece, that personal interest, that humanity, that empathy has been a very powerful output, I think. I wonder if when you're running things like the World Yoga Day in Bulgaria, is that something that people would be surprised about, or do they actually see you as being a better leader because you are doing things that are a little bit outside of the norm?
Well, yoga is not a good example because I'm in the shadow there. My wife does many things. She does extremely big number of cultural things, exhibitions, she publishes books, etc. So I'm not anywhere on the surface. I'm just trying to be the backup office. But I know how to do this, so it works very well as combination. And this is maybe one of the rare moments we have to spend together. So it's nice. No, but you see, I see how people are transformed. And this gives enormous satisfaction. It doesn't matter that you are not in direct contact. You just see people change and their life becomes better. They feel better. And this is something really great.
There has been this incredible shift, I think, in terms of encouraging people to bring more of their outside life into the work environment. I think for the good, because you really get to understand a person better, but they are being more true to themselves. If I go back even 10 years, I think there was a real delineation between work life and home life, and often you'd be in the office and you'd never talk about your personal life, and that does feel to have shifted. I mean, do you see that in the roles you do, that people are perhaps more willing to share more about themselves, and it's helping them be a better leader because of it?
Sure, because during the last 2.5 years, you have on a daily basis communication with people, and you see their kids, their cats, their wives. Everything is in a nice combination. Not always, but in most cases, and you feel the human side of the story. It's pretty good.
Can I just pick up one point, which is quite interesting for me? I mean, you've clearly founded your own firm, and it's grown to being top tier firm in Bulgaria. You've then also, you mentioned the American Chamber of Commerce, and then the Anglo, I think Bulgarian, if I recall, Chamber of Commerce, and how you've been involved in those. Now, a lot of people would think, oh yes, but starting a firm and growing a firm is one thing, but starting an association of that nature is a wholly different space. I mean, I suspect I know what your answer is, but how would you respond to somebody who felt that they were completely different activities?
Well, it's creation of something and dealing with people. Whether it's focused only in law or in business, I don't think there's so much big difference. And as I said, the stream of all the activities I'm trying to do is law and business and the environment. Because I started the firm immediately after the communism. So we had a big issue with the rule of law, so we wanted to do something new. But for example, in 1990, I went to the US. I saw how the American law firms work. I was extremely impressed. I came back and I said, oh, I'll do the firm here. And my wife said, it's very nice, but you should remember that you are in the Balkans. So we created a modern firm, but in the Balkans. So there is a nice mixture of some Western elements and local impact on them.
That's a fascinating example of how we can all learn from each other, and taking some of that experience you've seen in other parts of the world. And I imagine there's plenty of people looking at what you do now and going, we want to do something like that too. It just shows the value of being able to use that global environment to do things a little bit differently. I know you referenced in your talk, and I know we referenced right at the beginning, this sort of art of diplomacy. And it is quite a topic we haven't touched on much over the last episodes, but I'm fascinated about how you see the role of diplomacy, both as a leader, but also in terms of bringing people together. How do you find that's worked?
You see, it's a very interesting question. Thank you. Because what happens is that, like in many other sectors, there is a democratization. Because of internet and technology, because of many things, the world changed. And this change impacts also the diplomacy. For example, I am honorary consul for 22 years. And I see for the last 22 years, the increase of the importance of people like me. We are not paid, but we contribute more and more. Because the requirements of the population they become different. People want to do 2 clicks and to get the service. Obviously, you cannot get this service from ambassador or something. So there is a big movement, and it's also very interesting because, as I mentioned, we are not paid. So we spend our time and efforts for free with the good aim to help development of bilateral or international relations. I just came back from the International Congress of the World Federation of Consuls, 95 countries. And I realized whether you are black, yellow, white, or whatever you specify ourselves, we are exactly the same. I mean, you should have kind of craziness. Let me allow myself to say this. You should be crazy to do things like this. I mean, to devote your time for a very nice idea, but idea. So nothing material behind. It doesn't bring business, but you see that your contribution is helpful, and the relations between countries, sometimes you contribute more than a professional diplomat could do, simply for the simple reason you know the people, you have the contacts, businesses, you put them together, people enjoy their work. Very nice. In a broader picture, thinking about sport, about culture, medicine, business, whatever.
One of the points you made was I think you said it was an Indian man who said after 50 to 60, you should start giving back to society. Well, you clearly started much earlier than that. I mean, where do you think people should start? And I'd love Francesca's thoughts on that as well, given huge international organizations she chairs and leads.
I think it opens, we have a saying in my country, you open your window broader, and it makes you happy. It's very simple.
There is something incredibly powerful about that purpose part of what we do, the meaningful part of what we do. I mean, I think anybody who's running a practice or heavily involved in a practice gets a huge enjoyment out of the entrepreneurial element of that. But we are fundamentally community orientated people who want to give back in some shape or form. And I know some will give back by a local charity, maybe about something they do on a regular basis. But I think within the professions, there is a huge amount about giving back within either institutes or collective groups or pulling like-minded people together. As you say, you don't get paid for it, but you're getting something that often is of more value than money. And I think, Richard, perhaps to your point, well, particularly for somebody who's starting out in the profession, and looking to see ways that they can get involved where perhaps they don't have all the technical expertise or years and years of experience in leadership, they can learn such a lot for being part of organizations like this. They've usually got some insight that they can provide, but also I think being part of a community that's a slightly bigger, I love that open the window analogy, about really kind of stretching themselves in a slightly different environment. It's a great way to learn from other people, but also to be part of something where your desire to give something back is in itself a hugely welcome contribution. So it's a great way for people in the professions to have a slightly different variety of experience, which actually fundamentally, even though it won't give them money, it will certainly give them insight and experience that they won't get in other places. I mean, I've been lucky to be part of various institutes over the years, and I'm always impressed with the quality of the conversation, what I learn from it, what I see, and bringing like-minded people together towards a common aim is a hugely valuable part of being what a professional is about. You might not be able to solve everything, but you can certainly make things a lot better.
Yeah. Boris, you mentioned when you're talking about the scholarships and the foundation and the new generation of modern lawyers, I think you described it as. To what extent do you bring this, what I'm called community dimension to that? I don't know what the right word is. Curriculum is not. Sounds a bit awkward, but you know what I mean.
Well, we do this Balkan Legal Forum, as I mentioned. For example, this year we did, it was 22 years after the establishment, we did it in Vienna for the 4th time. It's called Balkan, but it's misleading because we had participants from Australia, from Singapore, from Jamaica, from Zimbabwe, altogether 35 countries. And all of the speakers are top-notch speakers from the US, UK, and where the law firm management is very developed. And initially we made it in Sofia with the idea to bring those people to the young lawyers in our region who are not able to pay high fees to go to London, for example, to study. So people used to come. And the interesting point is that all the people who come for one time, they continue to come. So most of the people started 22 years ago and they continue to come. It's extremely impressive family now we have, but young people continue to come and the family grows. You see, in addition, the foundation, we sent people to the US to study international law, American law, things like this. And this is a very strong tool because obviously the future is with these people.
But as a modern lawyer, to what extent do you see the modern lawyer being an understanding of, say, American jurisprudence, as opposed to an ability to provide a balanced service? We call it the O-shaped lawyer, is a term we have in the UK, a lawyer who's actually
they are not
able to really give the whole range.
In American law or in British
law.
The point is to see the thinking.
Right.
I remember many years ago, I was in the UK with the Minister of Justice here. A poor guy asked a question to Lord Wolf, and he said, "What about the corruption in your judiciary?" And Lord Wolf didn't understand in the beginning the question, and they say, "Oh, we had sexual harassment case of 1835." Yes, so it means you should understand the thinking and the culture, and this could make you a modern person.
What is it that makes us makes us bring our best the things that we do. And there's something that I think comes over very powerful about variety. That with what Boris has been talking about is a whole range of different things that he's involved in and that he has a passion for. And I think that's really powerful for all of us, is that most professional service people are curious. They like to look at problems and issues, and they've got a lot of different things that they're able to enjoy. And I think there's something very powerful about the variety of those roles. I think there's an intriguing piece around leadership styles, what works in different situations, what happens when you are truly leading something from the front in a sort of a, I know you mentioned command and control, but you're actually having to set direction. What happens when you run alongside someone? What happens when you're in the background and you provide that more mentoring, supporting environment, different leadership styles? And I love the piece about diplomacy, because I think we often think of diplomacy as something for the politicians, but actually there is something much bigger there, isn't there, about when you've got cross-cultural work, different kind of elements that are hugely important, that are very different in different countries. There's no right, no wrong. It's just different. How do you actually rise at consensus? I know you mentioned, Boris, the meeting you're at. Was that the one in India that just took place? Was that the...
No, in Cyprus now.
Oh, the Cyprus one. Sorry, I know there was a big one in India last week. But you put that melting pot of people together. How can you make sure you actually get an output? I suppose in a different environment, we've got COP27 on at the moment this week. You're trying to solve some of the world's most important problems with a whole range of people, with a whole range of different agendas. So there's something powerful about the art of diplomacy, of actually trying to drive an answer out of all of that, and it not just being a really great conversation, but a real action-driven piece. And I think there's something, Richard, this is, how do you turn that diplomacy into action, which is quite challenging.
So that could be your thought for today's session, almost, couldn't it, Francesca? I think one of the things I like to do, Boris, because unfortunately we're now just coming into the last minute, is just to ask our guests of what's the one idea, what's the one insight that you've had today based on this conversation. What have you come out with that you perhaps didn't have before? Just one.
Ladies first.
But I think it is about diplomacy is a really fascinating term for some of the things that we're all involved with. And then how do you turn that into actionable items that really capture the essence of what that diplomacy is trying to do? I think that's a really interesting thought.
Richard, not a professional saying, but I think just one word, do good for people.
Okay, well, that's a lovely thought to leave us on. I hope the Retuning Your Firm show, now in its 81st episode, has also done good for a number of people. They've been with us through the difficult times. We're now hit a recession in the UK, so more difficult times. I remember the last one some time ago. It wasn't much fun. So on which happy note, we will be back in 2 weeks' time with another set of guests, but just the one, Richard Oakes, and look forward to that and seeing this audience again. So on that happy note, leave you all and have a wonderful day. Bye for now. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.